Hey YouTube, I figured I would make one more video about Pokemon Pocket. I finally got to Masterball rank. I've been playing on and off since the start of this month when I released the first two videos I showed. The first two videos I showed were of the Dialga deck that I made on like day one of ranked. And after that, I showed a variant of the deck that ultimately would carry me most of the way through the ranks, and that is Giratina Darkrai. However, the version that I showed originally was not as optimized as the deck that you'll see here. This is the final battle I did that got me into Master Ball. I'm up against a Charizard deck. Charizard, in my opinion, is a pretty good deck, and I think the top player in the world uses this deck. However, it's really inconsistent, and it relies on coin flips with Moltres. Giratina Darkrai is very consistent, and it doesn't mind going first, unlike most other decks, as long as you get Giratina on turn one. But I mentioned that this version that I used is more optimized than the previous version, so I will go ahead and elaborate a bit on that. So the original version I showed was using Druddigon, and I used that version up until about Ultra Ball 3. And in Ultra Ball 3, I realized something. I was really stuck because of the pacing of the deck. Druddigon, while on paper it's very useful, it can soak up hits, and while they're damaging it, they'll take some damage themselves. It can't do any damage itself, and in the higher ranks especially, you need to be outputting damage faster than your opponent, because that's ultimately what this game comes down to, is who can knock out the other Pokemon first and get 3 points. So I took Druddigon out of the deck. Its primary purpose being just taking hits. You can have any Pokemon up front taking hits, is what I ultimately decided. And especially if that Pokemon up front has a Rocky Helmet equipped, it's almost as good as Druddigon anyways. The second thing I did is I made some changes to the trainer cards. Also, the item cards. Since I took out Druddigon, I no longer needed the Pokemon communication I was using before, because every Pokemon in the deck is just 2 Giratina and 2 Darkrai, and I'm guaranteed to start with one of them from how the game works, and then I have 2 Pokeball for when I'm looking for the others, and that's enough. I don't need Pokemon communication. And I was using 2 Rocky Helmets and 1 Cape. I ultimately ended up using just 1 Rocky Helmet and 1 Cape in the final version of this deck. I was using 2 Leafs before. I took that down to just 1. And then I do still have 1 Sabrina and 1 Cyrus, just to have everything covered. You need Sabrina for if their Pokemon on the bench that you want to bring in is full HP. And Cyrus is a very clutch card. One of my friends insists that every deck should have 2 Cyrus. However, I like packing my deck with as many win conditions as possible. So I only have 1 Cyrus. I have him there for when I need him. But the other supporter cards, I used 2 Dawn. And I originally wasn't using any. However, Dawn is such a clutch card. One situation you can get is if you go second and you start with Darkrai out front and Giratina on the bench, then on the very first turn you play, you can put an energy on Darkrai, you can bellow with Giratina, and then on the very next turn, if you get Dawn, you can put the second energy on a Darkrai and then transfer over the energy from Giratina, and you can do 100 damage on turn 2, which is absolutely, it is a little bit overpowered, I'll admit, but yep, that's why there's 2 Dawn on the team. I can't tell you how many battles I won that way, just from how quickly I could get out 100 damage from Darkrai. I have 2 Pokemon Center Ladies for healing And you really do want that extra 10 HP compared to if you just use a potion. That 30 HP from the Pokemon Center Lady can make or break in certain situations. Especially because a lot of things do 20 HP, like Darkrai's chip damage, for example. And the Center Lady would offset that by even just 10 HP, which matters a lot. And what else? I think that's pretty much the whole deck. I still have 2 red. Some people I've talked to say you only need 1 red. Some people say you don't need them at all. I insist that red is maybe the best support card in the game besides Sabrina and Cyrus and Professor Research. Red is such a good card. You can see I used him there to get some extra damage. He has won me so many battles where without him I would have lost. So yeah, he only works against EX Pokemon, but most decks use EX Pokemon. So getting that extra damage against them is highly useful. So you can see in this deck I'm going up against here, we're coming up on the end of the battle here soon. He does not have enough energy to use Crimson Storm again. And he even just used even more energy to try to retreat his Charizard to the bench. But I do have Cyrus in my hand, and it doesn't even matter what he flips here. Even if he had gotten 3 heads, it wouldn't have mattered because he doesn't have enough HP on his Charizard. And I go ahead and use Cyrus, pull that thing back in, and there's nothing you can do because I'm going to do at least 80 damage, and he resigns or concedes. And right here you can see I get up to Master Ball rank. It was quite the journey. It took me between 400 and 500 battles. Here at the end I'll show you my final stats as well as the deck if you want to use it. I highly recommend this deck. I think it's the best in the game. Yep, you can see the total battles there. I finished with a 54% win rate. And here's the deck. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for more content, and have a good one. Bye now.